forgot to zoom in at the beginning of this. Hello, Jax West from Steven Avery Project, MAM Gossip, Justice with Jax. Decided to go live for a little bit. I've got a little time this morning and I haven't scheduled anything to read from my book. And I mean, we're so close. I don't know if you can see the bookmark. We're so close to being done. Um, so I figured, yeah, I'm not giving anybody any notice, so nobody will probably be here, but you can watch it later. So, reading from my book, Wrongfully Abused, Making an Advocate for Steven Avery. This book is about my experience with the case, my thoughts on the case. I self-published this on Amazon in 2022, and I really need to do an update. So I've been considering when I'm done reading this, I will pick up where this left off and what's happened since 2022, because so much. As we've already discussed in previous lives, for whatever reason, there are no page numbers in this book. So I am on a page where you see sweaty sweat sweat. This is when I was at Brendan Dassey's at the oral arguments at the Seventh Circuit, and Kratz was a few people ahead of me in line to get into court in Chicago. So that's where this one picks up, is the article I wrote after attending the oral arguments. So here we go. The next one I actually attended. This is oral arguments for Brendan Dassey that happened in Chicago on Valentine's Day in 2017. I attended the oral arguments at the Seventh Circuit of Appeals in Chicago on Valentine's Day 2017. I am far from a legal expert and don't pretend to be. I took notes of what I saw and heard and will write that up for you here. When the date was first announced, I contacted Stephen Drizzen and asked him if I could attend and if I could bring paper and pen to write an article on it. He said I could. The day prior to the court date, I called the court to ask anything special I needed to know about entering the courthouse. I was told seats are first come, first served, and that cell phones can come in but must be turned off. The courthouse opened at 9 a.m., so we planned to get there by 8 a.m. My boyfriend bought us a spot in a nearby parking garage, so that would be one less worry. We got up early on Tuesday to leave my house in a Chicago suburb at 6:30 a.m. When we got to the courthouse, there was a pool of press already stationed on the first floor. We had to go up to the 27th floor. We got there and had to wait in line. I noticed sweaty Ken Kratz 5 people ahead of me in line right away. I started recognizing all the different press people waiting as well. Then I saw Brendan's attorney, Laura Nyrider, and Stephen Drizzen walk past. They went into a private room. I talked with the kid in front of me to find out his thoughts on the case. Turns out he was a law student who knew nothing of the case. He had never seen Making a Murderer. Just saw the press and decided to come check it out. Drizzen came out of the room and came over to me and pointed out my Justice for Brendan Dassey hoodie I was wearing, and he said he knows I think it's a good thing, but asked if I would take it off. I shook his hand and introduced myself as well, because my communication with him has been in messages or on the phone. He said he knows who I am. He thanked me, and then he and Nyrider walked away. I wished Nyrider good luck, and she thanked me. I then saw Laura Riccardi, one of the documentarians from Making a Murderer, in line. I don't know if I am just paranoid or what, but Kratz kept seeming to be staring at us. I am not kidding when I say he was sweating a lot. All I kept saying was sweaty, sweat, sweat. I just can't stop thinking that when I look at that pig. The courtroom opened and we went in. We chose to sit on the side of the defense in the back row. Kratz sat on the guilty side, right behind the Halbach family. I saw both of Teresa's brothers, her mom, and I don't know what you call him, her uncle or her stepdad. There were maybe 125 people total in the courtroom. It wasn't that big. There weren't any other supporters there other than us. Everyone else seemed to be law students or people who just wanted to come watch a show. We sat there for a half hour. Kratz's young girlfriend kept rubbing his back and seemed to be glaring our way. That may be my paranoia again. It was just very odd. She just kept looking at us. The three judges came in at 9:30 a.m. Wisconsin Deputy Solicitor Peter Berg got to speak first. He started reading his prepared speech about Brendan choosing, that's what he claimed, choosing to confess, and that the interrogators were just encouraging him to tell the truth, and that they didn't apply any pressure. And then U.S. Appellate Court Judge Alana Rovner interrupted him. Judge Rovner asked about Brendan's low IQ and said he was highly suggestible. Berg said nothing was promised to Brendan as a benefit for his cooperation. Berg claimed they said that they can't make any promises. Judge Rovner said Brendan was told the truth would set him free. Berg said he doesn't think Brendan thought that meant he would go free. He said Brendan volunteered the details. Then Berg started spouting off a lot of numbers. The microphones were not on, he wasn't facing me, and I am deaf in one ear. Oh, and me and numbers are not friends. I got lost in Berg saying something about Brendan resisted their offers 35 times, denied that he shot her or that there was a fire going. When Brendan was asked about her hair, he said he didn't know. Judge Rovner said that the interrogator said that he is a father and he wished he could help Brendan. He said, I am not a cop right now. It was a blatant lie. Berg said at that time the interrogators only thought Brendan was a witness. Judge Rovner said that they showed frustration when Brendan didn't say what they wanted. Berg said that the interrogators' main concern was Brendan telling the truth. Be honest. They didn't want him to make things up. Be honest. Judge Rovner said Brendan was particularly suggestible. She brought up the line of questioning. Who shot her in the head? Judge Rovner said that plants information to taint the confession. Berg said it is an appropriate interview technique. Judge Rovner said Brendan said they cut her hair and other various things. Berg said they didn't know if Teresa Halbach was shot in the bedroom or in the garage until Brendan told them. Judge Ann Claire Williams asked if Brendan's age was considered. Berg said something about the ineffective assistance of counsel and that would be used against Steven. I kind of got lost in this part as I couldn't hear. They kept citing the Sullivan case. Now I told you I do not know the law at all. So I see in Nyrider's brief, it is Cuyler, Cuyler versus Sullivan. When I look it up, I find brief fact summary. Respondent challenges his murder conviction on the grounds that his counsel's representation of his co-defendants presented an unacceptable conflict of interest that denied him effective assistance of counsel. Synopsis of rule of law. Defendants alleging a conflict of interest in cases in which multiple defendants are being represented by the same attorney in the same matter must demonstrate an, quote, actual conflict, unquote, that, quote, adversely affected, unquote, the outcome. Judge David Hamilton asked if there was any physical evidence that a rape or a wound to Teresa Halbach's throat occurred. Berg said no, because the body was burned. Judge Hamilton said, so they only have Brendan's confession. Berg said there weren't any promises of leniency. Any promises were vague. Judge Rovner said the police were allowed to induce a confession to get a confession. Judge Rovner asked why the May 13th interview was not introduced to trial. Was it because of a ruling? Berg said he wasn't sure. I am sure Kratz was dying to raise his hand like a sweat hog and proclaim he knows the answer. Judge Rovner said it is unreliable. Berg said Brendan chose to make that call to the police. Judge Rovner said they told Brendan that he doesn't want to be lying to his mom. I really thought Judge Rovner was awesome. She kept reading from the coerced confession. Berg kept saying it was voluntary, when put in context to what the judge is reading. In my opinion, Berg just looked ridiculous. Berg was done at 9:52 a.m. Laura Nyrider went to the podium. She began reading her prepared speech. She said the interrogators told Brendan that they know he is scared. He is scared he is going to be arrested, but they think he will be all right. They said they already knew what happened. Judge Hamilton interrupts Nyrider like Judge Rovner did to Berg. He asked if there's another case where the child thought they were going back to school. Nyrider said they told Brendan that it is okay because they already know. Judge Williams brought up that Sullivan case again. She asked if the police knew about Brendan's intellect. Nyrider said they knew he had an IQ of 73. Brendan was in a special ed support system. She said they knew his age. Nyrider said it isn't relevant if they knew his IQ. It was their suggestions. They repeated it like a drumbeat. Judge Hamilton said Brendan did hear his Miranda rights and was told they can't make any promises. Nyrider said that Len Kaczynski did not turn over evidence of the video that Michael Kelly did, so the defense didn't know the pressures they put on him on May 12th. They don't know, just say that everything is going to be okay. They say they know he's scared of arrest, but he's okay. Nyrider said that's enough for a 16-year-old developmentally challenged boy to think he will be going back to school. Judge Hamilton asked who was the source about him cutting Teresa's throat after she was raped. He said that it was either known from memory or it was made up. He said it was contradictory. It comes out slowly, but was Brendan's free will. Nyrider said they let him embellish till he got to their plot point. They gave Brendan false promises of leniency. They gave him each step and then allowed him to tell their story. They said Teresa Halbach was shackled to a wooden headboard, yet there were no marks on it. Brendan was just trying to guess how Teresa was killed. There's not a trace of forensic evidence of Teresa Halbach or Brendan being in that trailer. Judge Rovner brought up the closing arguments in Brendan's case when Kratz said that an innocent person would not confess, but they know many who have. Nyrider said that false confessions happen all the time. She cited the Central Park Five, now known as the Exonerated Five. Nyrider said they now use Brendan's interrogation to teach what not to do. Was there any physical evidence linking Brendan to a murder? No. They led him to say that the shooting happened in the garage because of the bullet they, I'm going to put in quotes, found. When Brendan was first asked where she was shot, he said by the fire. Nyrider said the investigators provided Brendan the answers they wanted him to say, like that Teresa's electronics were in the burning barrel. Nyrider was done speaking at 10:14 a.m. Berg got a chance to speak one more time. He again says that nothing said to Brendan was a promise. Berg claimed Brendan got specific warnings. Berg said these were Brendan's memories of Teresa Halbach. None of this was suggested. Brendan is the one who said he heard Teresa screaming and saw her chained to the bed. He saw her crying. That there was an awful smell when her body was burning. Berg said Brendan said all that voluntarily. He was done speaking at 10:18 a.m. Judge Rovner said that both sides were very well briefed and it will be taken under advisement. That was the end of the hearing. What is my takeaway from this? I always stay positive in both Brendan and Steven's cases. My heart and my head both say that this went very well for Brendan. Nyrider is so impressive. I have complete faith in her. The judges can take 6 to 9 months before they rule, so we are back to waiting. As soon as I hear of a decision, it will be posted immediately. Until then, please think happy thoughts for Brendan and his mom and dad. Gross. Well, no, dad is in Pete. That's fine. That boy needs to go home to his parents and get to just chill out playing video games for hours. Hashtag free Brendan. Hashtag making a murderer. Hashtag we all live on Avery Road. Hashtag never give up. The next article is titled My Take on the State's Response from July 27th, 2018. Let me start out by once again saying I am not a lawyer and readily admit that I am not all knowing when it comes to our screwed up legal system. But below are my thoughts on the latest response by the state. The whole purpose of this response is to claim there isn't any Brady or Denny violations because they say they turned over all the CDs or DVDs from Bobby Dassey's computer and it was just Strang and Buting's negligence to not look into it. But wouldn't that prove ineffective assistance of counsel? Everything revolves around the computer that was in the Yonda Dassey home. Barb and Bobby continue to lie and change their story every other day. It had internet. It didn't have internet. It needed to be wiped because it was too slow. It was in Bobby and Brendan's room. No, it was in Bobby's room. Wait, no, it was in the living room. The trailer was always locked. No, it wasn't. Lots of men had access to the computer that was password protected, so they would all sneak into the trailer to surf porn in the room that Bobby was sleeping in instead of just doing it on their own computers in privacy. Give me a break, Barb and Carla. Hi, Carla. You are desperate to say that Steven would go to that trailer to surf porn when he lived alone and had his own internet. It makes no sense for him to do that. All the evidence points to Bobby. He was the only one home when those searches were done. Why are you so set on protecting a killer? Why is it okay to let Steven and Brendan do time for a murder they didn't do to protect the real killer or killers? Sorry, I'm going to go off into tangents in this article. Hang in with me. Here is the timeline in the response. April 21, 2006, Fassbender gets the computer. 4/22, Fassbender gives it to Detective Michael Velli. April 24, Velli starts the analysis of the hard drive. 5:10, Velli finishes. 5:11, Velli gives the computer a CD and 7 DVDs to Fassbender. 12:07, Fassbender writes his report on the computer. In the report, it allegedly says there were images with the name Emily. I know this is how they are trying to claim it was Brendan on the computer, since Emily was allegedly a girlfriend of some sort at one point of his. 12:14, Sweaty Sweat Kratz mailed additional discovery to Strang and Buting. It doesn't say he sent the CDs or DVDs. 12:15, Sweaty Sweat Kratz mailed an inventory list to Strang and Buting that says, quote, 7 CDs, contents of Brendan Dassey's computer, unquote. January 25, 2007. State claims Strang and Buting had the 7 DVDs for 40 days. Are you noticing that it keeps switching from CDs to DVDs and keeps saying 7, even though the total, it should be 8? Sweaty Sweat Kratz tells them there was, quote, nothing much of evidentiary value, unquote, to the examination of the computer. February 4. Strang wrote that Brendan's computer isn't relevant unless he is used as a witness or his statements included at trial. February 13. On the second day of trial, Strang said he wanted his stipulation on record. April 17, 2018. See, we were in 2007. Now we're all the way to 2018. Kathleen says they only have the 7 DVDs and want the Velli CD. The state gives it to her. Kathleen gets an expert to look at the CD. The state is claiming they didn't suppress anything, yet their own filing says they only turned over 7 CD or DVDs when there's 8 total. They also claim that it wasn't favorable to the defense. Wrong again. It shows just as much motive for Bobby to commit the crime as their alleged motive for Steven. Steven didn't have any porn on his computer. Bobby had loads of it. Bobby had the opportunity and the means to commit the crime. He doesn't have an alibi. You can't count Scott seeing him as an alibi. Yet Steven talked to Jody multiple times. The state claims they didn't suppress anything, so it's not a Brady violation. But again, their own filing says they turned over 7, not 8. Over and over, it says 7. They then claim just because the defense says they didn't have the CD, it doesn't mean they didn't send it to them. Their own documents say they only sent 7. They're then saying Fassbender's report mentions the CD, so that is good enough. They contend Strang and Buting should have asked for it. How childish is that? While I agree that Strang and Buting dropped the ball majorly here, it doesn't change the fact that the state kept it from the defense. Why not give it to them in the first place? Strang and Buting never looked into this since Brendan wasn't being used against Steven at trial, but it did go to prove Brady as it showed that Bobby had motive. Here we go. The state calls out Brendan, Blaine, Scott, Brian, Bobby, Barb, Tom, and Steven, all as having access to the computer. They all didn't have access at the dates and times the porn and sick pictures were searched and downloaded on the computer. The only one home at those times was Bobby. Possibly Scott, as he would sometimes go hang with Bobby since they both worked the night shift. Then they claim there is no evidence that Bobby could have murdered Teresa. There's more evidence that Bobby did it than there is for Steven. They say the defense never said where or when he killed her or how he was assisted by Scott. They say saying so doesn't make it so. But they sure did that to Steven, didn't they? Time for ineffective assistance of counsel. They claim there wasn't any because they could have asked for the CD and looked at it. Total bullshit. As I already said above, Strang and Buting dropped the ball, but Sweaty Sweat Kratz was hiding the ball. The last thing in the filing is an affidavit of Michael Velli. He goes over the timeline we already did above. I found it interesting that there were pictures of Steven and Teresa on the computer that were saved on 4/18/2006 when Steven and Brendan were in jail. But I guess they probably went to the unlocked trailer that didn't have internet and did that too. So, in my uneducated opinion, the state just proved they hid the CD from the defense. Kathleen didn't get it until this year. Steven should go free, as this case has been so slimy from the start. At the very least, he should get a new trial with an impartial jury that doesn't work for Manitowoc County Sheriff's Department. Richard Donovan really needs to get a life and stop stalking me. If you have to constantly watch everything I do, you're a fan, pussy. Oh my God, I haven't thought of that guy in forever. We now wait for the court to rule. They have 60 days. If they rule against Kathleen, no one will be shocked. Wisconsin is corrupt, and they aren't going to admit now that they put 2 innocent men in prison. Well, 1 innocent man and 1 innocent boy. Steven won't get any chance at justice until he can get his case out of Wisconsin. Hashtag Steven Avery Project. Hashtag Never Give Up. Hashtag In Zellner We Trust. This is all I have that I wrote up before I just started going live on Facebook and discussed my thoughts on what was going on in the legal process. So if you want to know those, you will have to go into the video archives of both Steven Avery Project and MAM Gossip. Back when I wrote that, Facebook wasn't deleting all the live videos. So you can now find all the live videos from both Steven Avery Project and MAM Gossip in this YouTube, because now I do everything here because they don't delete it. Next is other articles. Here are some other things I have written up. This one is a recap of Dateline NBC's episode called Return to Manitowoc from 2017. So that's something I regularly would write articles on, is anytime there was an episode, a book, whatever, on the case, I would watch it and take notes and then write a summary of it. Ken Kratz said he thinks that Steven started planning this crime the first day he went to prison. I have no idea how that would even be possible. So when did Kratz start planning his crimes? Teresa Halbach's friend, Kim Peterson, said Teresa would always get the smile from her clients. Fassbender said there was blood in the cargo area and a blood swipe near the ignition switch. He says it's Steven's blood from a cut on his right hand middle finger, a contact pattern swipe. Let me pause right there. If you've ever looked at that blood near the ignition and that squiggly line, and have you ever attempted for your finger to see about turning a key, and if that finger would go anywhere near the dashboard? It would not. So that's all a stupid thing to say. Bone fragments were in the fire pit. The fire was as high as roof of the garage. I have been to the fire pit. There is no way there could be a fire that high, and that garage made from particle board would have gone up as well. The pictures they show of the fire pit make it look like it was way farther away from the garage than what it really is. Plus, the propane tank was right there as well. They found the key in Steven's bedroom. It has his DNA on it. Please don't even get me started on that key. It is brought up again later, so I will unleash then. The hood latch had DNA that matched Steven. Wonder why they didn't talk about the imaginary sweat DNA that Kratz claimed it was that doesn't exist. Or how about the lab tech that admitted he didn't change his gloves after touching Steven's car and then the hood latch, so he would have transferred Steven's DNA to the latch? Steven always denied he did anything and said the cops planted evidence. Kratz said his, I say fiction book, is about the case against Steven. Then he said it is his theory of the case. Theory isn't facts, idiot. Kratz thinks Steven set his sights on Teresa weeks before because she had 5 prior visits. Steven calls her directly at times and not through Auto Trader. Seriously? It's a salvage yard. They sell cars all the time. Teresa gave her cell number out. She didn't work in the office. If someone does a good job for you, of course you request them back. Kratz said he bought shackles and handcuffs. The ones they showed were not the ones he owned. He had pink, fuzzy sex handcuffs. No DNA was found of Teresa's on them, so she really didn't leave a trace of herself in a bedroom where she was allegedly raped by 2 men. No scratches on the headboard. Did she not struggle at all? Makes no sense. Then Kratz brings up the time he answered the door in what he described as a small white towel and claimed Teresa was freaked out. He had a bathing suit on. He was in his pool in the yard when she got there. She wasn't freaked out. She laughed about it with her friends. If she was so afraid, then why would she ever go there again? Or wouldn't she at least bring a friend with her? It's not like Ryan Hilgas had a job at that time or anything. Don't claim he tricked her by using B Yonda so she didn't know where she was going. She was given the address. If even then she didn't recognize Avery Road being where Steven Avery was, wouldn't she just turn around and leave when she got there, when she figured out where she was, if she was so creeped out? Then Kratz said Steven is a psychopath. Then he said he alleges that and believes it deep down. Get the fuck out of here. Kratz preyed on abuse victims. Who is the psychopath? They showed one of the letters Steven wrote to his wife when he was wrongfully imprisoned at the time, where he said, "I will kill you." Jody has said he physically abused her. A teenage girl accused him of raping her a year after he got out of prison. He was never prosecuted for any of those. But Kratz thinks Steven has a deep resentment of women and he has no remorse for his behavior and feels incredibly entitled. Again, with this shit. Do you have remorse for the women you have damaged? I'm speaking to Kratz. What about that little press conference you did that all lawyers were way out of line? You prosecuted two men for the same crime with two completely different scenarios and no evidence. Steven has a resentment of women. Where is your proof of that? He has no remorse for his behavior. He didn't do anything to have remorse for it. He feels incredibly entitled. A man spending most of his life in prison for crimes he didn't commit has every right to be angry. In March 2006, Fassbender and Wiegert interrogate Brendan and get him to confess to a murder he didn't commit. Fassbender said Brendan is a shy kid, somewhat introverted. He claims Brendan freely told them about the sexual assault, shooting Teresa in the garage and burned her in the bonfire. His confession helped them find the bullet fragment that had Teresa's, I'll say planted, DNA on it. The bullet was from Riley Johnson's gun above Steven's bed. They never found any blood in the garage. Steven's cousin, Kim Ducat, said she did tell Steven that Manitowoc wasn't done with him. They weren't going to give him any money. All Steven got was a $400,000 settlement that he used for his defense. Buting said they had a tough defense. No one wants to say police deliberately plant evidence. Part of the search was a huge conflict of evidence. The blood sample in the styrofoam box was slit open. The key was planted. It was not found in 6 or 7 entries to the trailer. Fassbender said there was no vendetta against Steven. He didn't know him or his family. He claimed the police were hardworking and only wanted to do this investigation the right way. EDTA is used to preserve his blood, and no presence of EDTA was in the sample of blood that was found in the RAV4. They had a nurse that was going to say she put the hole in the vial. It's normal. They didn't do a thorough search at first because they had a lot of buildings to search. Let me pause there because I always have this sitting here. So this is the exact type of vial that they used, that you can even see. It says, I'm sure you can't see that it says, no, it's still blurry. So it says EDTA on here, Vacutainer. I have a video that I'm sure you can find on here that my husband took, drawing his own blood and putting it into this vial. And then we took pictures of the top of the vial to show, yes, they're exactly right. The needle goes into the top of this, and that's how the blood goes into this vial. And so when you're done, you will see a hole on top. And so that's just how it's done. And you saw in the pictures that I took of this vial back then, it had to have been 2016 or 2017, so 10 years ago. This, as I said, is the exact vial my husband did. All right. The hole is no longer there, is no longer visible. So for there to be a hole in the top of that container when Buting was there, when they opened it, means it had to have had a needle stuck in it recently. It's not there years later, because here this one is years later and there's no hole in the top of this. And I will also note my husband's blood is all dried up in here. It's still there and like chunky in there, but it's no longer liquid in this. And it has not been opened ever since my husband did this himself. I actually should have him do it again, because he's got more of these vials. And we should do another test. And I am the only person who ever talks about this. I don't know if I've ever brought it to Kathleen Zellner or what, but I have debunked the whole, oh, they couldn't have possibly planted his blood from this because the hole is typical, because the hole has to be recent because it's gone 10 years later. It's not in the top of this vial. No more hole in the top of this. Okay. Lincoln Colburn were deposed shortly before this case, yet they found the key. Fassbender said they didn't have the resources, so he needed them. He thinks a conspiracy to frame Steven would be virtually impossible to carry out. Kim said Brendan is not capable of rape. She doesn't even know if he knew what that was. Laura Nyrider said Brendan is a simple soul. She was struck by his humanity. He's not someone who she would see commit a crime like this. Nobody was in Brendan's corner when he needed help the most. If they had to describe Kaczynski in one word, Nyrider said unbelievable. Drizzen said unconscionable. Kaczynski is read some things said about him. He's a disgusting human being, man with a sickened soul. He said he's seen it. He said that it was clearly a mistake that he wasn't there when Brendan was questioned. He said he'd apologized to Brendan for not being in the interview, but thinks it had no impact on the verdict. This guy is a total tool bag. What he did to Brendan was horrible. I don't know how he can sleep at night knowing he led that lamb to the slaughter. Drizzen said these officers took advantage of a disabled youth and got him to say what they wanted. He has severe learning disabilities that make him vulnerable to the tactics the officers used. They never should have made those suggestions that they wanted to comfort him. That all would be well. Those are a recipe for false confessions. Nyrider said they needed Brendan to provide answers that only the killer would know. They asked leading questions to get him to say Steven looked under the hood. They had received a report from the Wisconsin Crime Lab saying Teresa was shot in the head. They worked extremely hard to get Brendan to say that. They wanted that info in the worst way and got it in the worst way by feeding it straight to Brendan. They showed the clip of Brendan telling his mom that they got to my head. Nyrider said the first thing Brendan says when out of their influence, they got to my head. Fassbender claims it was a real confession. He was not trying to extract a false confession. He claims he was legitimately concerned for him. He rationalized his line of interrogation by saying he doesn't access IQs. Brendan wasn't like other boys socially, but he could think and knew right from wrong. Fassbender does think it is possible Brendan is easily manipulated. He agreed that Steven went under the hood. People think they were planting things to put in his head, like who shot her in the head. He said there are always things you can improve on. It's easy to armchair quarterback and second guess. He claims there was nothing nefarious done. They didn't try to manipulate, they just got to the truth. Really? You are sticking by that, leading Brendan to say the things that fit your narrative was all on the up and up? It's obvious that Brendan was just guessing at things or saying what he knew they wanted him to say, parroting their words. Judge Duffin ruled Brendan's confession was involuntary. Fassbender said they did everything above board. One magistrate ruled it isn't, and that's fine. It's just his opinion. Fassbender believes Brendan was involved in it. Sandra Greenman said Steven is very gentle and very loving. He had heard there would be a story on the Ryan Ferguson case on Dateline and told her to watch it to check out the lawyer. She knew that's the woman that is going to get Steven out of prison. Zellner has freed 18 people. 20 people now, actually. I believe it's 20, not 21. I think it's 20. Zellner said they will be able to demonstrate exactly how the evidence was planted in the early part of the investigation. Steven was framed for a crime he did not commit. There was no proof that Mr. Avery was becoming obsessed with Ms. Halbach. Rehashing a story about inadmissible evidence seems pointless. Mr. Kratz has no qualifications which would allow him to diagnose Mr. Avery as a psychopath. Mr. Avery has never been diagnosed as a psychopath. Kratz said he is not afraid of Zellner because he is not involved in the case anymore. Oh, is that only why? Because you're not involved? Whatever. He said he shouldn't be afraid of anything. His involvement is concluded. He doesn't think Zellner has a chance because they spent 18 months putting this case together very personally. What does that even mean? Who cares if they spent 18 months? Zellner has had the case over a year now, at that time when I wrote this, and she has far more resources than Kratz could ever have. Kratz admitted his prescription pill addiction and sending sex. Very hard for somebody with a lisp to say sex. Kratz is hoping his book will change the narrative. Which narrative is it this time? Killed in the trailer? Killed by the burn pit? Killed in the car? Killed in the garage? They raped her? Didn't rape her? Poor Kratzy. He was so upset over winning this huge case where everyone just believed his bullshit that it drove him to drugs and to abuse women. Let's all say it together. Aw. Kim Peterson says Teresa is the reason we are talking about this and she deserves to be remembered. Then they play the, what I say is creepy, diary video. Kim said Teresa is still in her heart and she will never forget her. That episode was far less offensive than I thought it would be. The commercials had claimed all this new evidence that would make you switch from thinking they were innocent to guilty. There was nothing of the sort. Kratz has no credibility. He abused his position to rape women. Yes, rape. Forcing abuse victims to have sex with you is rape. Fassbender coerced a 16-year-old boy into implicating himself in a crime he didn't commit. Why would anyone listen to anything these guys say? They are just so desperate for attention. It's really very sad. Don't take what these guys say at face value. As they say, the truth is out there. Go find it. Go read the transcripts. Watch or listen to interrogations. Look at the photos. Everything points to these poor guys being set up. Poor people lose. They lose all the time. Hashtag we all live on Avery Road. Hashtag never give up. Hashtag making a murderer. Next is my review of Jerry Buting's book, Illusion of Justice, and my article when I visited his book tour from 2017. Pause. Hold on, where is it? That's Wrecking Crew. Here's one copy of his book that Buting signed for me. But this was a different one. Where's the one? Will this be the one? I've got so many books. Yeah, this is the one he signed to me. Illusion of Justice, Inside Making a Murderer, and America's Broken System by Jerome Buting. And this one is the one he signed for me. That says, to Jax, thanks for fighting for justice in Steven's case and every case. Best, Jerry Buting. What do I have in the back of this book? Oh, I saved this. So here's the thing you were given at this event. Making a Murderers, Dean Strang and Jerry Buting, A Conversation on Justice. Friday, June 3rd, 2016 at the Chicago Theater. Okay. back to reading my book. And my bookmark actually is the thing that I got from that event that Buting gave me to go backstage. All right, so let's go into reading about that. Oh, wait. This isn't from this. This is from the string Buting thing I went to. The book thing was a different thing when he came to Naperville. All right. I was interested in reading Jerry Buting's book, but then I found out his book tour was making a stop just one town over from me. The bookstore that was hosting it, Anderson's, then asked me if I would speak at the event and gave me free tickets. I needed to get the book ASAP, so I was educated on it before the event. It only took me 2 days to read it. There is a lot in there about Buting's background and other cases he has had, but I am only going to cover stuff that pertains to making a murderer. I do recommend getting the book and reading for yourself. I will go over things from the book that I found of interest to the case. Some I had never heard before. Some I knew but have forgotten. There's just so much to remember in this case, so let's get started. Buting discussed how Andrew Colborne got a call while working in the jail 8 years prior to when DNA proved Steven's innocence in the Penny Bernstein case, but he did nothing about it until the DNA came back. Then he and Link wrote a report and hid it in a safe. How ridiculous is that? But these guys were involved in the Halbach case? I thought this was very interesting. Remacher had initially said that they coordinated the efforts of the volunteers who were searching for Teresa. If that's the case, then that would mean Pam Sturm was acting on behalf of law enforcement, so needed a search warrant to be on that property. Who was involved in coordinating that? Wiegert, one of the men who forced Brendan into falsely confessing. Buting said that in prison there is the attorney-client privilege, so anytime they met with Stephen, it was not to be recorded. But it just so happened that anytime they talked to him, it was in the one room that had recording equipment. They were told it wasn't on, but they don't know if that was true or not. What time is it? Okay. I have to meet friends for lunch today. Stephen has never once admitted any guilt in the Halbach case. All his calls and visits have been recorded. Not a single time has he said anything that would say he was guilty of this alleged crime. All he ever says is he wants to get out of prison and that law enforcement was out to get him. There wasn't any of Stephen's fingerprints on the RAV4. I thought Buting did a good job of doing some damage control for people who think Strang and Buting didn't do a good job for Stephen. The internet wasn't what it is now back when they were investigating this case. When Buting was trying to find information on EDTA, he couldn't really find anything online, so had to look in books. I will always defend Strang and Buting on this. I know many people, Stephen included, doubt that Strang and Buting did everything they could for Stephen. I think they did. They didn't have a documentary spark people's interest to start investigating everything. They didn't have information available so easily. Link was the person who transported Stephen's blood to be stored at the clerk's office. Then he is the one searching Stephen's room when he was deposed in Stephen's civil suit. Oh, and looky there. He is the one who finds the magic key that no one could find in the tiny trailer bedroom after 7 searches. Wiegert was the one that brought Buting the box that had Stephen's blood vial in it. But for some reason, it was just the white styrofoam box, not the big cardboard box one it was in. Wiegert claimed the other stuff in the box just had fingernail scrapings and hair and not anything they needed. But things that make you go, Ooh, back to EDTA. EDTA is found in cleaning stuff like Armor All. So that's something Kratz was going to use if EDTA was found in the blood sample on the car, that Teresa kept her car clean and must have used Armor All. 10 people had just as much access and opportunity to kill Teresa as Stephen did. Human female pelvic bones were found in the Redant quarry. All 10 people visited the salvage yard on 10/31/2005. One was a frequent customer who attacked his girlfriend with a hatchet a few days afterwards. This is another thing that I always talk about. Just because Buting had said that an Avery brother or Barb's son or boyfriend could have done it, it didn't mean that is what the lawyers or Stephen thought. You just must show that there are other people that could have been suspects, but that they never even looked into them. It wasn't anything negative against any of the family. It's just showing that it was possible for it to be someone else. But it was never considered because law enforcement focused on Stephen from the start. Brendan wanted a lie detector test. That is why Kuczynski hired O'Kelly. O'Kelly was allegedly a lie detector expert. Then he claimed the results were inconclusive, but lied to Brendan and told him he failed it to further manipulate him. This is the thing that drives me up the wall. The trickery that these guys can legally get away with, all to put innocent people in prison. It is disgusting. You get 7 strikes at Voir. I don't know how you say that lawyer word. VOIR, next word DIRE, voir dire, something like that. The judge refused to strike the wife of a former lawyer for Calumet County. She used to regularly sit with Kratz at dinner functions. She also knew Teresa Halbach's brother, Tim, who is also a lawyer. She believed Stephen was guilty from the start. Another juror admitted to reading the press, even though they were told not to. Link signed himself out of the Avery salvage yard the day that Pam Sturm was led by God to find the car. He was never signed in. So he had the opportunity to plant blood in the car. Remacher was awarded $100,000 in a civil suit, and one of his jurors also sat on Stephen's jury. How that isn't another conflict, I have no idea. Sherry Culhane contaminated the bullet sample since she was talking to people without wearing a mask. So she then had to wash the bullet and test the wash. While the prosecution will try to sing her praises because she was the one that did the DNA test that freed Stephen the last time, she also had it sit in her lab for a whole year before she tested it. Another year of Stephen's life just stolen from him. She was also the person whose testing convicted him in the first place. You know that there is a chance that the blood in the RAV4 was planted. The bullet they found in the garage was contaminated. What else do they have? Oh yeah, the sweat DNA on the hood latch. First off, there's no such thing as sweat DNA. Secondly, that was also contaminated. This time, a forensic scientist has been searching the passenger compartment of the RAV4 and then went and opened the hood without changing their gloves. Something to remember is that Culhane had one of the highest contamination reports that year. Just saying. Only 40% of cremains were found. It would fill a 1-liter bottle. They were found in 2 different sites. What appeared to be burned female human remains were found at a 3rd location in the quarry. They were never identified with any certainty to be human. A forensic anthropologist believed 2 may have been a female pelvis. All they had is that they were burned to the same degree as the others that were identified as Teresa's. Manitowoc Sheriff's Department searched on November 7th and found electronics and bones, but they never took any pictures or videoed the scene. Sergeant Jason Yost didn't even file a report about it. The state forensic anthropologist Leslie Eisenberg was not called to the scene either. Thomas Sturdivant of the Wisconsin Division of Criminal Investigation said they had to ID the bones quickly to find out if they belonged to the missing girl. Manitowoc County Coroner Deborah Kekich saw the search on the news. Why wasn't she called? Uyghur told her that her services were not needed. Then the Manitowoc County executive and lawyer told her that she had to back off this case because of the civil suit. How does that make any sense? She didn't have anything to do with Stephen's civil suit, but Lenk, Colborne, and Uyghur all did. Why was it okay for them to be there? Judge Willis also wouldn't let the coroner testify. Where is the original burn site? Most often, where the most bones are found is where the bones were moved to. So, in this case, that would mean Stephen's burn pit is where the bones were moved to, and that the quarry is where bones were scooped up and moved from. Many of the Averys went to Crivets on that Thursday. Stephen went on Friday. They found the RAV4 on Saturday. Someone very easily could have driven that car in there Friday night. Buting said they never accused the police of killing Teresa at the trial. That's what Kratz would like people to believe, but all they were saying was that police planted evidence. Someone deleted voicemails before she was even reported missing. That was never explained why. Bobby and Scott were each other's alibis, and that was never investigated. Kratz said at Stephen's trial that all the evidence pointed to one person, but then a few weeks later at Brendan's trial, now it was two people responsible. There was no trace of Stephen on his landlord Raleigh Johnson's rifle that they claim is what killed Teresa. The jury took 4 days to deliberate. They said he was guilty of murder, but not guilty of mutilating a corpse. We now know that was because some jurors thought Stephen was innocent, but a bully on the jury got them to vote guilty, and the compromise was to vote not guilty on that charge. The jurors were hoping that that would send a message that they didn't all think he was guilty and that it would get him another trial. When Strang and Buting went to talk to their client after the decision was read, they had already transported him to the Manitowoc County Jail instead of the Calumet County one he had been in for 16 months. Buting was very afraid that Manitowoc County was going to kill Stephen now and make it look like he killed himself due to the guilty verdict. They would say it was a suicide, so Buting warned Manitowoc County Sheriff's Department that Stephen's safety was in their responsibility. Buting never understood why Brendan's lawyers agreed at their trial to not show the entire interrogation video and the end when Brendan immediately tells him, his mom, when he sees her, that they got to his head. Kratz said there was no blood in the trailer at Stephen's trial because she was killed in the garage. At Brendan's trial, he said she was raped, stabbed, and killed in the bedroom. He now claimed there were two people responsible for this crime. Buting said not only did the prosecutors, defense, and judicial system fail Brendan, but the press did too. They did not call Kratz out on any of this. Buting questioned why were there bones in the burn barrel? Why did it take 7 searches to find the key? He thinks Teresa was burned elsewhere, and then the remains were scooped up and put in a burn barrel before being dumped into the burn pit. Since it was dark, they didn't notice a few bones were left in the barrel when they then placed it near Barb's trailer next to the 3 barrels that are normally there. Dawn Pliska from Auto Trader said she and Teresa had laughed about the towel incident. Teresa wasn't scared of him. Stephen arranged a hustle shot with Teresa on October 10th privately. He had her cell number. So if he was planning to murder her, why would he schedule this appointment through Auto Trader and not call her privately? The bullet from the rifle and the bullet they had in evidence showed a great deal of differences when it was test fired. It was also the most common rifle that everyone up there had one. There you have everything I found of interest about this case in the book. Man, do I blather on forever. Now it's time to get into the book signing. And there's a picture of the book signing. I counted around 50 people in the audience. I was surprised to see so many hands go up to say they have never seen Making a Murderer. Buting said that he was still in the 5 years range from battling cancer when Strang asked him to join him on the Avery case. Buting's wife was a public defender as well as his law partner. They discussed it together on whether he should take the case. There is no downtime on a case like this. You live and breathe it. They had 2 young kids. His wife told him to take the case. On March 6, 2006, Kratz had that press conference. Buting believes it crossed a line of ethics. He was influencing the potential jury pool. The state has the burden to prove guilt to the jury. When you do a press conference like that, it is difficult to change their minds later. 139 people in the jury pool said they thought Steven was guilty. Wisconsin judges are elected and need the endorsement of law enforcement agencies, so they really don't want to rule against them in court. False confessions are a real thing. 25% of the people who confess are innocent. He talked about the Reed technique, which assumes that law enforcement are human lie detectors. No denials will be accepted. They're allowed to lie to the suspect. They can say they have evidence they don't have. Buting is really bothered by them saying to Brendan they weren't police then, but fathers who know that his uncle put him up to this. On that very day that Buting was talking to us, the second biggest trainer of law enforcement announced they would not be using the Reed technique anymore. Buting suspects Brendan's case had something to do with that. Illinois has recently passed a law where you can't interrogate minors aged 15 and under of a serious crime without a lawyer present. They can't waive their right to counsel either. All interrogations of minors aged 18 and under have to be recorded on all felonies. Wisconsin had just changed the law 6 months before Brendan's case so that all minor interrogations had to be recorded. They will be rewriting the Miranda warnings so young people can understand them. Brendan's case went to the federal court. It's a writ of habeas corpus. Brendan's confession was thrown out and the state appealed it to the 7th Circuit of Chicago, where they had oral arguments on Valentine's Day, which I've already talked about. Buting thinks it will be quite a few months until we hear anything. In his experience, it's like 3 to 6 months. If the court rules that his confession is thrown out, the state then must either release Brendan or retry him. Steven now has Kathleen Zellner representing him. She is doing additional forensic tests. She may have fact witnesses as well. Buting said over 100 scientists contacted him in Strang after Making a Murderer. Zellner can then file a motion for a new trial based on the new evidence. Buting said 2 guys were tried on 2 different theories. There wasn't any blood, DNA, or scratches on the bed or headboard. Kratz's rebuttal in Steven's case was that there wouldn't be, as the murder occurred in the garage by only 1 man. But then he tried Brendan on it being 2 men and the murder happened in the bedroom. Buting said at least one of those theories is not the truth. It's just about getting a conviction. And here's a picture of me talking to Buting. Look at my shoes. I love those shoes. And the family fans totally came for me for how I was dressed, telling me how unprofessional I was to go dressed like that. I think I've covered all the things of interest in both the book and the book signing. Make sure to pick up the book, and if his tour comes near you, go on out and check it out for yourself. He does a question and answer segment, so you can ask him something you've always wondered about. Stay tuned to hashtag Steven Avery Project and hashtag Free Brendan for all the latest news on the cases. Oh, and I talk about it. Before I move on, I must talk about the picture of Buting and I. It was yet another thing that Carla and her minions attacked me on. They made fun of what I was wearing and said I was unprofessional. I don't know what the dress code is to wear to a book signing, and I am confused on what they think I must be professional about. I am just a supporter who bought that book. Actually, I bought 6 copies of it as I had him sign copies for all my moderators and send to them as a thank you for all their help, and paid for tickets to hear the author talk about it. I love my Converse boots and don't care if they think I should have been wearing something else. But have you seen how the Avery family dressed in court? And so my outfit to a book signing is something to rip on? Okay, then. The next one really pisses me off. There was a show on the Reels network in 2016 they titled Murder Made Me Famous, and they covered Steven's case. Here is my recap of that one. And that will probably be the last thing I read today. We'll see how long this is. Where am I at? Time. I just got done watching the piece of shit Reels calls Murder Made Me Famous. The July 30th, 2016 episode was allegedly telling the story of the Teresa Halbach alleged murder. As I am a big supporter of both guys and I run the Free Brendan Facebook page for freebrendan.org, I decided I would watch this crap to see what they were going to pretend was fact. Wow. Let's go through this. They start out trying to show that Steven has been on the wrong side of the law almost all his life, and his crimes were increasing in seriousness. What? They talked about the burglary he did when he was 18. He broke into a bar with some friends, and they stole sandwiches, quarters, and some beer. Then there's the whole cat thing. Yes, being any part of burning a cat alive for fun is not something I support at all. If you actually look into this case and want facts, Steven is not the one that did this, but he was there and he has taken the blame for it. As I have said, not cool, and I think anyone who would do such a thing is a piece of shit, but that doesn't make them a murderer. Then they were stating, like it's fact, that Steven exposed himself to his cousin, Sandra Morris, and that he and his wife at the time were having sex out in their front yard just so Sandra could see it. Again, what? That is hearsay and not fact. Sandra was going all around town talking shit about Steven. So yes, she drove past his house one morning and he ran after her and got her to pull over and he pointed a shotgun at her. He let her go when he saw a child in the back seat. 2 wrongs don't make a right. I know. But where is the blame for Sandra in all of this? Why is it okay for her to go around town making up such lies about Steven? Then they went into the Penny Bernstein case. This fantasy show dismissed Steven's multiple ally witnesses because they were family. He had 17 witnesses and they weren't all family. He had receipts from the car wash, fast food place, and store he had stopped at. The police took the drive to see if he could have made the trip in time, and they just barely made the timeline work by speeding with their lights on. Steven was driving his family on errands, his newborn twins. How does it make any sense that Steven would race his wife and kids home and then speed to a beach to try to rape some chick? We heard about how Andrew Colborn received a call saying that they had the wrong person in prison, but he didn't report it for 8 years. This farce of a show failed to mention how Steven was identified. Jean Couché actually drew Steven's mugshot to show her. Oh, and the woman who took the report and immediately said that it sounds like Steven, Sandra Morris's BFF. Not random at all. They did a lovely reenactment of Steven in prison, allegedly drawing out his plans for a torture chamber for women and saying that the best way to get rid of a body is to burn them. This must be fact, as the guy didn't report this until after Making a Murderer aired. And of course, prisoners never lie. I just want to scream anytime the guilters try to say he answered the door on one of Teresa's visits in nothing but a towel. Not true. He was swimming in his pool in the backyard. He wrapped a towel around him when he answered the door. What a bunch of crap. They went one further. They claimed that Teresa told Auto Trader that she didn't want to go there again, but they told her that this appointment was with his sister, B. Yanda. What the fucking fuck? First of all, Teresa never once said she was afraid of Steven and wouldn't go back there. She laughed about the towel incident. Secondly, one of the big things used in trial is that Steven was luring her there using the other name, and that they didn't know it was Barbara even because of using the initial instead. Teresa knew where she was going and who she was going to see. Please go read the testimony. You can find it on StevenAveryCase.org. Teresa called Auto Trader and said she was on her way to the Avery brothers. No fear, no worries. Much of the episode has Manitowoc prosecutor Michael Griesbach, who has written a horrible book that no one should buy or read as it's just more of this crap, putting his spin on everything. He said Steven was luring her there by using star 67. If he was luring her there, then why would he call Auto Trader to schedule the appointment in the first place when he had her cell number? Sure, he asked for them to send out the same girl that was there before, because he liked her work. Don't you request the same person if you like them the first time? Hardly suspect. Can someone explain to me why Steven would murder Teresa Halbach? His girlfriend Jody was recently incarcerated. He would drive her to her alcohol classes from the jail. He was actually supposed to drive her that day, but it was canceled for whatever reason. Sorry, gotta yawn. Ugh, reading makes me tired. And now people will say, look, I'm boring myself reading my own book. If you look at Steven's phone records, you will see the time he stopped working and went home before Teresa arrived, that he was talking to Jody, her lawyer, and the jail. So he saw his girlfriend regularly. He was about to get a lot of money, tax-free, more money than he's seen in his life. Yeah, I would sure be angry and be trying to murder someone. It was Halloween in the middle of the day in a working business. Yeah, that's where I would commit murder. Makes absolutely no sense. Griesbach claimed that Teresa's car was in Steven's garage. Nope, never was. Their cheesy recreation showed Steven stabbing Teresa in the garage and then telling Brendan to do it, and he allegedly does. How come the guilters can have so many ways this alleged crime took place? Where was Brendan bringing the mail to Steven and hearing Teresa's cries? Where was the rape in the bedroom? The stabbing her in the bedroom and being the best cleanup crew ever and getting every speck of blood, DNA, hair, you name it, cleaned up in this filthy trailer, but able to leave all the other mess untouched? Ha! Then they claim the body was put in the car because they were going to put it in the crusher. They're just saying that now, as we have said the whole time, that if you owned a salvage yard with a car crusher, you would crush the body in one car and then put it in another. You would never find the body. Have you been to the yard? The quarry behind it? Well, I have. Where Teresa's car was found in between a big pond, deep enough to completely submerge the car, and a huge quarry that has tons of places you could hide a car and a body that no one would ever find. Then they showed them burning the body in the fire pit. Another thing I have personally been to. That fire pit is so close to that particle board garage that a fire that big and hot would light up that garage. Plus, the propane tank was right near there too. Just didn't happen. Sorry, guilters. They claim that Teresa was shot 10 times. No proof of that whatsoever. There's actually no proof she was even shot. No proof she's even dead, for that matter. Go read the reports. It's all there. The perspiration on the hood latch trick. There's no such thing as sweat DNA. This wasn't allowed in the trial as the lab guy contaminated the scene by not changing his gloves. I know the prosecution likes to make it out like this is a huge bombshell that making a murderer left out, but it wasn't in the trial for a reason. Again, go read the transcripts. Ugh, I think this is the part that upsets me the most. The March 1st interrogation of Brendan without his mother's knowledge or permission and without a lawyer present. They had interrogated Brendan back in November. His story then was he got off the bus, went home, played video games, etc. After the cops made their rounds trying to force other family members into incriminating Steven, they got a patsy. Cousin Kayla claimed Brendan had confessed to her that he was part of it. Brendan was brought in multiple times and questioned over and over, but he wasn't brought in on February 28th. Why? Well, they got a lab report that said one of the alleged bone fragments allegedly had something consistent with lead on it. So they dragged Brendan back in on March 1st and kept prompting him what to say. They needed him to say that they shot her. But Brendan just keeps coming up with different answers. What else did you do, Brendan? Be honest. Punched her? What did you do to her head? Be honest. Cut her hair? Okay, I'm just going to come out and ask you, who shot her in the head? Steven? Why didn't you tell us that before? Because I didn't think of it. How much clearer does it need to be for people to see this poor boy was coerced? He thought he would get to go back to class to turn in an assignment. He had no idea what he was doing there or what his rights were. They claimed Brendan was unprompted in telling them they cleaned up the garage with gas, paint thinner, and bleach, and Brendan had bleach on his jeans. Go watch the complete interrogation and then try to tell me it was unprompted. Have you seen the trailer and garage? Pig size. No way are they going to clean up a crime scene anywhere. They showed the tamper blood vial and explained away the hole in the top. Yes, they are right about that. I have done my own test on that, and there was a hole in the top. That does not explain why this was kept in the office of someone affiliated with an Avery juror, why the box was opened and not initialed. It was contaminated at the very least, and that alone is reasonable doubt in this case. How do you know the vial wasn't opened to get a little blood that was then used to smear Steven's blood in the RAV4 with a Q-tip? You don't. Reasonable doubt. I laughed when Griesbach said it was Teresa's keys, S plural, were found in Steven's bedroom. It was one key, and not even her primary key. It was her valet key. You know, like my valet key, which is also kept on a rope, just like Teresa's was. Her boss at the studio had testified that Teresa had a key to the studio and was always worried about losing it. So, is someone who is always worries about their keys going to keep all their keys separate to keep track of? Doesn't make any sense. They didn't go into any more of the key, but I am going to anyway. They searched that room multiple times. No key. They ripped that trailer apart, destroyed it, ripped out carpet, paneling, even pipes. If you watched Making a Murderer, you saw the mess that Jody came home to. But now on the sixth search, now the magic key just happens to pop out from the back of the bookshelf that they claim was hidden in the back and only popped free when Colborne was forcibly shoving porn back into the bookcase. Wrong. Again, they didn't put anything back where it belonged. Any porn they found, they took for evidence. The picture they took of the key on the floor has the bookcase looking perfect. Even the change on the top didn't move. The bookcase is close to the wall, so there is no way a key that size is going to fall sideways out of it. Obviously planted. It doesn't have any of Teresa's DNA on it, but just happens to have Steven's. Isn't that a lucky break? As we all know, both guys are found guilty. They were tried for the same murder, but completely different scenarios. Weird. Brendan isn't eligible for parole until 2048. Then they talked about Making a Murderer. They said it was watched by over 19 million people. Griesbach said he completely disagrees with MAM's agenda. It's not an agenda, jerk off. Your book, that's an agenda. Griesbach whined that good police officers' names have been dragged through the mud. That is so laughable. Again, go read the transcripts. And please don't tell me that my opinion is based on a show. I and most supporters have done our homework. Read all the transcripts, watched all the interrogations. I didn't just take this show's word for anything. The filmmakers tried to show all sides of this story. It's not their fault that the Hallbox and prosecution chose to stay out of it. Griesbach tries to sum up all the evidence as Steven's blood in her car is planted. The key in his bedroom, planted. The bullet particles with Teresa's DNA on them in his garage, Sherry Culhane was told to put her in his house or garage, and she contaminated the sample. Griesbach said this is a prosecutor's dream case. Sure, it's a dream, as it's all made up in fantasy, yet a nightmare for Stephen, Brendan, and their family. So, to sum it up, this was a prosecution advocacy piece and didn't have any desire to present the real story. Stephen and Brendan's families were not contacted for this story. It is total bullshit. I'm just seeing how long to the next chapter, if I continue reading this or no. So I'm going to stop here. Maybe the next time I do this will be the end. So when we pick up the next time is talking about Brendan, his mom, and Scott Toddock. I'm putting my little bookmark in here. So that's how much I have left to read. This here. That's left of my book, which is called Wrongfully Abused, Making an Advocate for Steven Avery by me, Jax West, that is self-published on Amazon. And while I end this, I keep meaning to text Steven, so let me do it right now. People always ask on Steven Avery Project when I comment and saying, I got a text from Steven. So there's an app called Getting Out. So it's GTL, Getting Out. You have to sign up for an account there, and it costs you money. Looks like the last one I sent him still hasn't even been sent to him. So maybe that's why I didn't hear from him. That was sent on May 26th, and it says pending. So I'm going to write, hey, Steven, checking in. Have you seen your dad yet? Send. All right. And then it says message cost 15 cents, remaining balance. And then you have to click to agree. Send now. That's just saying pending. But then on that one, it also says sent down on the bottom. But then pending down here. Let me go. All right. So on other ones, it says approved. Approved. So I don't know what's going on there. But hopefully Steven has been able to see his dad in person and not just on Zoom. His brother Earl has been keeping their dad from Steven, and that's quite disgusting. So Steven, we're still waiting for his attorney, and yes, Kathleen Zellner is with Steven's case. She is never leaving Steven's case unless Steven were to fire her. You may not hear from her because there's lots of years that nothing happens. So that's why you don't hear from Kathleen. Okay. She hasn't left the case. There's nothing wrong. There's nothing going on. I'm trying to get my two arms equal here, and they're just not equal. So she is writing something to submit to the governor because he is done being the governor in January, and he is now considering giving inmates clemency. So maybe he would finally free Steven. So when Kathleen has submitted that and we get it, we will post it on the Steven Avery Project on Facebook, and we would go live on here to read it. So no other news on Steven. On the Melissa Kaluzinski case, that is also Melissa is also represented by Kathleen Zellner. I just got news on Friday that the Illinois Department of Corrections has finalized that they will be closing Melissa's prison and moving to a different location. Melissa's prison is in such bad shape. And so for me to drive to Melissa's prison, it's a 2 hour, 15-minute drive one way. And I drive there and then drive back after the visit. If they move to Crest Hill, Crest Hill's like a 30-minute drive for me. So would be so much easier for me. That would be so great. Melissa is nervous about that though, and has anxiety, because she's been living in that prison for 17 years. And she, even though that prison is in bad shape and nobody should live like that, it's what she's used to and she's afraid to leave it. But it would be a good thing. The Marnie Yang case, we have court on Monday, June 29th, where the judge is supposed to rule on her stage 3 evidentiary hearing, that we will find out if she's going to get a new trial. Hopefully we have court that day. It's been scheduled and pushed, scheduled and pushed, scheduled and pushed. So those are the other cases that I work on. I do not know when I will go live next. I didn't even know I was going live this morning. I was sitting outside by my pond enjoying the morning before it gets too hot. And then I was like, I'm going to go in and read some more. It's been a while. And my work has just been so busy that I don't really have much time. And it's going to be really busy for basically the rest of this month. So I do not know when I'll go live. I do not know if anybody will get a heads up. So, but as Christopher, the moderator, has told me before, is most people watch these things recorded, not when I'm live. So it's better if I do it when I'm available instead of not at all, that I'm trying to find what is the best time to do a live that more people could join me. All right. So, as always, thank you everybody for joining me. And of course, Stephen, Brendan are innocent. Investigation continues.